Hi, I'm Joni Patry, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Well, today I want to talk about Donald Trump's chart, where he's going, and how he will fare in these elections, November 5th of 2024. Now, there's so much going on with this. It is really astounding as to what has been going on all these years. What does this all mean? Why is this all happening? That's a good question, but to be honest with you, I don't have the answer to that. But I do want you to see the chart of Donald Trump and what's going on astrologically in his chart, what I think. Now, it doesn't matter what your take is on Trump, whether you like him or dislike him. Please look at what I'm talking about honestly with the transits. And I've talked to many astrologers. They all see the same thing. This is not whether or not you're biased or not. Talk to those that like Trump, those that don't like Trump, and we're all seeing the same thing. So I'm going to put up his chart, and we're going to analyze this to see what we see astrologically. And I know people get all in a tizzy and an uproar every time you talk politics because people are so emotional. Everybody has, a strong feeling about where everything's going. And I just want you to look at this chart. And I am always in the belief everything happens for a reason. And most of the time we don't realize what that reason is till way into the future. And we look back and we kind of get an understanding of why things had to happen a certain way, or why the ball is rolling in a certain way because of certain things that have been instigated and happening for such a long time. So with no further ado, let's put up Donald Trump's chart and see exactly what's going to be happening on November 5th. So before I get going, I want to remind everyone to sign up for my free newsletter, which you can get my predictions delivered free every week to your email address. Go to galacticcenter.org, and while you're there, check out my Patreon page. If you want to be part of a spiritual community, I appear and talk to people live twice a week with this. We have conversations. I will get to know you. It is an amazing community. So sign up for that, as well as I'm starting a new predictive tool that you're going to love. It's called the Galactic Planner. And if you sign up for it, you will get a free month to try it out. So be part of the free month. Go to galacticplanner.com. You'll love it. So anyway, let us proceed to look into the chart of Donald Trump. We've looked at this chart before many times. And one thing you see with this chart, he was born on a lunar eclipse. And he does have the Kalasarpa yoga in a chart, which, Kalasarpa means all the planets are on one side of the north node of the moon and the south node of the moon. North node is Rahu, the south node is Ketu. And even though planets are conjunct the nodal axes, it's still the Kalasarpa, which means an entrapment karmically. And let me tell you something about people with Kalasarpa. They have highs and lows that are undeniably extreme. And this does definitely, I think, speak what Donald Trump's gone through. But one thing I have seen with most Kalasarpa yogas, when they go into a low and they go from highs to lows, they usually rise to an even higher position than they were before when they hit the low. So that explains a lot with Donald Trump as well, doesn't it? So he has a Leo rising, which means the sun is his chart ruler, and the sun sits in his 10th house, not only with Rahu, but with Uranus. And Rahu and Uranus mean extremes and sudden unexpected changes. And in the 10th house represents his career. So, I mean, he's been bankrupt, he goes higher, he goes bankrupt, he goes, court cases. I mean, this is an extreme. And not only does the Kala Sarpa predict that, but so does Uranus, the planet of sudden unexpected changes. In his 10th house also represents all the radical shifts and changes in his life. Now he also has a moon Ketu in the 4th house. The 4th house is called the seat of power. But with Ketu there's been many losses and changes and disruptions, I must say. But getting towards November, now Jupiter has just entered into Taurus, and that means it's in his 10th house. Just as I was speaking of Gavin Newsom is a Leo rising with Jupiter, transiting Jupiter in his 10th house. Now, instead, Jupiter trines Gavin Newsom's sun, but it conjuncts Donald Trump's. And this is pretty powerful. If you will notice, though, Donald Trump has his Jupiter at 24 degrees of Virgo. Actually, exactly conjuncts Gavin Newsom's sun. But let's see, Jupiter will trine his natal Jupiter when it conjuncts his sun, because his sun is his Rahu sun sit at 29 degrees of Taurus. Very, very interesting. Now, here's why I say that. Because on the day of the elections, I'm going to put the date up, November 5th, around midnight, Washington, D.C., transiting Jupiter will be at 25 degrees of Taurus. And therefore, it is exactly trining his natal Jupiter at 24 degrees of Virgo, but almost conjunct his Rahu sun in the 10th house of career and social standing. This means Jupiter in the 10th will create a rise. Now, what dasha is Trump in during this time? He will move into Jupiter-Venus September 27th of 2024. So you're going to see a big shift. Now, you might say, well, he's got Venus in the 12th house. That's not such a great placement. But the transit of Venus is vitally important, because whenever you're in a dasha, those transiting planets become the most important. Okay, so let's consider the fact that on election day, look where transiting Venus will be, at 29 degrees of Scorpio, while Jupiter sits at 25 degrees of Taurus. So here's the beauty of this. Venus sits on the moon. Of course, it's already crossed over Ketu. And what's interesting, if you remember from Gavin Newsom's chart, Gavin Newsom has his Mars at 27 degrees of Scorpio. And Donald Trump has Ketu at 27 degrees of Scorpio. So they have all these planetary tie-ups. That's why I think they are the ones that are running against each other. It has to be. There would not be so many planetary alignments. But Donald Trump's Ketu on Gavin Newsom's Mars and Gavin Newsom's Mars on Donald Trump's Ketu, wow, that is a treacherous fight. But going back to the transits, while Donald Trump is in the Mahadasha of Jupiter-Venus, transiting Jupiter and transiting Venus will be in opposition in the heavens, but activating Donald Trump's sun and moon. Notice his moon sits at 28 degrees of Scorpio. Venus is on his moon, and it's in the 4th house, the seat of power. But it is also aspecting, Venus is aspecting his sun where Jupiter sits. And I think it's a little bit more prominent to have the sun in the 10th and Jupiter on it, rather than Jupiter aspecting the sun in the 2nd house, as Newsom has. But let me just say this. His dasha is everything. It empowers those transiting planets, Jupiter, Venus. And for Jupiter, transiting Jupiter and Venus to be opposed one another from his 10th and his 4th house, activating his, not only his sun, but his moon, the 2 most important planets in a chart, speaks volumes, speaks absolute volumes. Now, another thing that could be looked at, does Donald Trump have anything to do with that eclipse that happens to Newsom's Saturn that sits in his 8th house? Yes, it sits in his 8th house at 15 degrees. Remember 15 degrees of Pisces? And then I'm looking at this eclipse. Well, the main thing I see for Trump is his Mercury sits at 15 degrees of Gemini. And therefore, his Mercury sits at the focal point of this eclipse energy, because it's exactly in a T-square pretty much. But the sun and the moon in Virgo. Now consider this, the sun and the moon are in Virgo, and they're sitting on his Jupiter. This is much better than it being aspecting Saturn or the sun. Now, one more thing let me point out. Remember how I said, now he has been president before, so you're going to see tie-ups with the United States chart and Donald Trump's. I've pointed this out before. People don't like this because it proves a point that if they don't like Trump, they don't like seeing this. I've had friends say, I don't care about the fact that Donald Trump's Jupiter sits at 24 degrees of Virgo, and that sits on Saturn in the United States chart at 24 degrees of Virgo. And if you'll check out his Mercury at 15 degrees of Gemini, that sits on Jupiter in the chart for the United States at 15 degrees of Gemini. So that's the makings of someone that's connected to the United States and has the possibility of being the president. And he already has been. Now, one thing I will say that I haven't pointed out is the fact that Mars will be in his 12th house, but it will also be in the 12th house of Gavin Newsom's as well. And that, it's a little bit more treacherous for Trump because Mars will have crossed over Trump's Saturn and Venus right before the elections. So it's not looking as favorable for Trump till the day of the elections, when Venus hits the moon and aspects the sun. And Mars, by the way, on the day of elections, will be aspecting Gavin Newsom's K2. So that looks treacherous. Mars full square to Newsom's K2, which I feel is not an advantage. So weighing it all out, let me just go over this again. Weighing it all out, I have to say the dasha and the transits for election day do favor Trump. Now, as I said before, after these elections, Mars is retrograde, and Mars is it's going to turn retrograde around December 7th of 2024, about a month after the elections. And maybe we don't even know exactly who becomes president, or maybe there's a big contesting fight over all of this. And what is going to happen is there's going to be great violence in the streets over all of this. Now, why is this all happening? I don't know. But as I said before in many of my dissertations, this is all karmic. There's everything that's coming together for a reason. You may not like the reason. I may not like the reason. But this is destiny, all unfolding. Something's happening here that's bringing everything to a head. And I do believe, maybe I'm always the eternal optimist, that it's all happening for a divine reason, to clear things out. Because this has to be cleared out. Whatever's been going on, whatever has been happening underneath the surface, and all the fighting and all the political turmoil, something will change from this event. Huge change. And maybe it will be really ugly for a while, but eventually something will evolve out of this. As I have always been saying, and I hate saying this, but there has been a lot of corruption that's been going on underneath the surface for a very, very long time. And we talk about the United States being so pure, democratic, always there to help everyone. Well, let me just say, control and power and money do not make for the most democratic country in the world. Okay? So we're going to see the likes of what the truth is, and everything that's been moving forward is going to bring this out. And I gotta say this, nobody's gonna like what they see. Nobody. But it's been there and it's been happening, and it's time that the reality and the truth come out. And I'm all for that. I'm all for knowing the truth. Because if we know the truth, then we know how to work on it and heal it. And we haven't known the truth for a long time, but it's about to unfold. So get ready. We're all in this together to bring about a new era. And let's just say, regardless what side you're on, all we want is a new era of healing and making the world a better place for future generations. And my eternal prayer is, may the best thing happen for the highest good of everyone on planet Earth. So with that, I think I'll close. Remember, if you would like more information on me, you can always go to my website, galacticcenter.org. Sign up for my free newsletter, join my Patreon, as well as remember my Galactic Planner. It's going to come out soon. You'll get a free month, galacticplanner.com. As well as if you want to study with me, study Vedic astrology, understand how I have just come to all of these realizations through the planets, go to universityofvedicastrology.com and become my student. Thank you.